Hello. Music stopped. Slowly faded out, and you guys should have slowly faded out with it. Y'all just went on talking, so that's cool. All right, so have some announcements. That's what I'm doing. Announcements. Mentorship is having an information session after show and tell today. So, what the hell? To be a mentor and to get a mentor, you should stick around and learn more information about that. Who's signed up already? That's a sad number of hands. Very sad number of hands. Also on my piece of paper is call to draw, which I talked about last week and berated you guys about, and then I was wrong. It changed. So instead of being announced on Sundays, it's going to be announced on Thursdays, like today. So now, what?
It's robots.
It's robots. See, I was going to say that, and then she stole my thunder. So this week's theme is robots. So draw pictures of robots. They could be really accurate schematic drawings of robots. They could be like sexy robots. They could be like old school robots, like they're made of stick. Hashtag call to draw at PSU.GD, and maybe we'll figure out a way to put them on the projector next week, or maybe I'll just read your handle and you'll get showered with followers, rocketed to internet super fame in seconds. Also, this is a couple weeks out, but I'm so excited about it that I'm going to announce it anyway. And it's 1-800-HOTLINE bingo. Get it? It's Drake themed bingo, which is maybe the greatest thing to ever happen. It's on February 11th. So how many weeks? I'm announcing what? 2-3 weeks early. I'm so excited. It's $2 a card. No card limit. I don't know what that means.
That means you can play like 50 cards if you want to at one time.
All at one time. There you go. You play 50 cards. That gives you more chances of winning. There are prizes. And if you wear a turtleneck, you get a free game card. It's so much Drake theme, it's killing me inside. I assume we're only gonna play Drake music. I mean, I have it's not written anywhere, but I'm establishing that as a rule. Can I make the playlist? I'm calling dibs. Luke has something to say about Hotline Bingo.
We're working on getting a green screen so you can get pictures of you dancing.
Oh my god, you guys.
Is bingo even going to be happening?
I don't care about bingo. The bingo for me is like the lowest. I'm just excited about all the Drake that's going to happen. Oh, it's so good. All right, also, there's a new PSU.GD Instagram. I don't know if some of you have seen that, but it's just PSU.GD, all lowercase. So that's pretty sweet. Follow that one, but don't unfollow FOGD because we're still cool a little bit. Not as cool, but close. Also, the new A&D Lounge is still open. It's been open, but now it's called the Living Room, and it's open for chilling. And I wrote that in my notes, and I spelled it with a Y. In identity design, brand consulting, user experience, and interface design. So now everyone clap really loud.
All right. So we're Dana and Eric, and we run a studio here in Portland called Sunset City. I should probably start the presentation. Thanks for having us. We were excited that Kate asked us to come and share some of our career experiences with you and to sort of take stock on the first year. This is a new studio that we have launched in the last year, and we're also pretty new to Portland within the last year and a half. So a little bit about Sunset City. So Sunset City was born out of a strong desire to be involved in the crafting of narratives behind companies and initiatives that we feel are shaping the collective future of humanity. We're living on the precipice of huge societal shifts governed in no small part by the role new technology plays in how we live our daily lives. We believe designers play a key role in how these technologies and ideas are understood and implemented. So Sunset City just recently celebrated its first year as a functioning studio, and in that last year we've been fortunate to work on a few projects that have this strong future focus. One of those future-forward clients we've been excited to work with is NASA, of which we launched 2 new projects with this year. Most recently, we helped redesign NASA's astrobiology website. So astrobiology is a study of the origin, evolution, distribution, and future of life in the universe. When NASA discovers life outside of our planet, which scientists believe is a practical inevitability in our lifetime, this website will be the portal to understanding those findings. And we think that's about as cool of a project brief as you can ever get.
Another project that we had worked on this year, we were approached by Amino towards the end of the summer to help them rebrand their company that had actually been working in stealth mode for the last 2 years. Amino is the first company to create these data sets out of the billions of healthcare interactions that take place in the United States. Information that for years was only used by companies to improve their marketing efforts or research, but not necessarily to help you make informed decisions about your healthcare. So Amino launched in October of last year and is enabling people to be matched accurately to doctors that have the most experience based on their needs. The company previously known as Inbox approached us early last year when Google released their new mail app called Inbox. So they needed a new name and a new brand. Nihilus has redeveloped the base layer of email, something that hasn't actually changed in over 20 years. So the new platform now allows developers to actually build applications on top of the email, something that was basically impossible previously. We came up with the name Nihilus formation. It's actually a formation of sea ice that bends and flexes, but still retains its strength to reflect the powerful flexibility of the new platform. We've also had the opportunity to work with a company called Otherlabs for a couple projects, actually. Otherlabs is an incubator for future-forward technology like compressed air robotics, mini milling machines, and what we worked on most recently was sun folding, which they are doing solar tracking devices that are run on compressed air.
So during that project, we got to go down to Otherlabs laboratory in San Francisco, and it's really cool. They work out of an old pipe organ factory, which is like a really badass nod to how they've advanced the technology of compressed air from when it was originally used to build pipe organs. So on the tour, they showed us some of their in-progress work building humanoid robots, soft robots. So one robot had boxing gloves on, and they let me take over the controls, where I promptly
He punched himself in the face as a robot.
So we know that when the inevitable robot apocalypse happens, I will probably be the first to die.
We've also had the opportunity to work with Google X on a handful of their moonshot projects, like Makani, the energy kite, Loon, which is an internet balloon that floats all over the world, delivering internet to places that otherwise can't get it. Iris, which is a contact lens that's used to detect insulin levels for diabetics rather than having to prick yourself. Self-driving cars, and one of their more recent projects, Wing, which is a drone delivery system. We couldn't actually show you any of that because they're really crazy about their secrets. So just imagine, this is their lab. That's like some of their room.
That's the stuff they want you to see, but there's way cooler shit happening. So the title of this talk is actually Desireline. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. We wanted to show you guys some of our work, but we feel like there's maybe something valuable in explaining how our careers have sort of led us to this point. So have you guys ever been out walking and seen or noticed an unsanctioned divergent path begin to draw you away from your seemingly destined course of direction? When city planners and architects lay out walking paths and sidewalks and trails and parks and around public spaces, they invariably find that people soon begin to make their own informal paths, cutting from one walkway to another, or even going off in a new direction completely. These unauthorized paths are formally known in the profession as desire lines. So we think there's a powerful metaphor here when thinking about our own careers, and we would like to show you how this concept has played out, not only in our individual, but now joint narratives as designers. What urges us to create or follow desire lines in our own lives? To depart from the approved, laid out tracks in our own landscape, and to forego the comfort and defy institutional instruction. Sometimes while following unknown paths, we find ourselves in a maze of growth, unsure where we are and flailing through jungles of impenetrable, menacing vegetation. All at once we realize we are lost, unable to retrace our steps back to where we once knew. But then, almost as suddenly, we emerge back on that familiar pathway, far from where we thought we were. But sometimes, just sometimes, we come to a new and unexpected space, a magical place, unanticipated in our daily thoughts or even our dreams. And when we do, we are so amazed that we cease to even wonder whether we'll be able to get back and find our way home. This may be, in fact, our new home. So I grew up in the north suburbs of Chicago, completely obsessed with two things: outer space and drawing. I consumed every space and science book the Waukegan Public Library had available, and I drew countless pictures of my imagined and eventual life in space. I had all my birthday parties at museums and planetariums, although one birthday in particular no one showed up to, which my mom assured me was because there was a winter storm, and not because all the kids thought my constant quizzing them in the order of the planets was super lame. And she said it was a storm, and I believe her, so that's totally cool. This is one of my better drawings. It's titled, "Houston, We Have a Spelling Problem." I think I was setting myself up to be a designer here. I actually spelled it right on the space shuttle. Confusing. I then spent a summer at space camp in 4th grade. Space camp was a big deal to me. It was the first time my parents let me travel a long distance away from them on my own. And I felt so much agency to be myself, to indulge in every dorky facet of it. And it was nice to be around others that shared my enthusiasm. Well, almost everyone did. One kid was there really only because he won space camp as a prize on Double Dare. I actually think he intentionally blew up his monorocket. Anyways, he laughed at me when I threw up on the multi-axis gravity trainer, so screw that guy. I came back from space camp with as much purpose as a 10-year-old can have. The path to becoming an astronaut is straight and narrow, and I felt like I could do it. My parents enrolled me in a magnet school for junior high so I could more focus on science and math. Astronauts are required by NASA to have a degree in some applicable science field, and I had taken an early interest in physics. Here I am at the Illinois State Academic Olympics, presenting my experiments in developing a hydroelectric energy system. I won gold in my category that year, but I was also the only one wearing a suit, so I'm not sure how much that had to do with it. I entered high school with a successful momentum in hopes that I would do well and get into an Ivy League school, perhaps MIT or even Cornell, where my hero Carl Sagan taught. I could stay on that well-paved path all the way to a launch pad. But something happened in between, and I became this little shit. Stuck in that awkward stage of limbo between childhood and adulthood. Coming of age emotional turmoil derailed my now star-crossed dreams. My grades slipped, everyone was yelling at me all the time, no one understood me, what even is life? I didn't realize at the time, but a desire line was beginning to reveal itself during this tumultuous era. The desire to know myself, as cheesy as that sounds, I'll say out loud. That's my brother Tim in red. I was really fortunate to grow up with a brother so close in age. He's just a year younger than I am. So Tim turned to music, like most of my friends did, to try to make sense of himself. Music is such an immediate, deeply visceral form of expression, and while I was attracted to it, I was unfortunately born without any natural proclivity towards it. So I watched as my brother sorted through his notes on stage, and I documented it behind the camera like I did in the shop during a regular basement practice. I realized that there was a visual component to music, and that I could play a role in that relationship. I still love to draw, and bands needed t-shirts. I found an outlet for my individual expression as well as a way to participate in this larger collective effort. So I taught myself to screen print and begin to translate drawing into design, which was something I knew very little about. There were no rules, and I worked in ways that were accessible to me, drawing my own type, cutting paper, tracing clip art. I mimicked other designers working in the music space, guys like Jeffrey Kleinsmith at Sub Pop, Aesthetic Apparatus, and Art Chantry. I started to enjoy the challenge of trying to convey a band's sound in a poster or an album art. My brother always kept me busy with new projects for all of his new bands, and I really started to feel like design could be a fulfilling direction to take in my life. So as Tim and I became more engrossed in the world of music and design, our desire to manufacture culture in bigger ways also manifested. We had come across so much great music by bands we knew were struggling to reach a wider audience, so we decided to commit our efforts to starting a record label in the hopes that we could expose these artists. We didn't have a clue what this would entail, how to go about funding it, or even how to get a record pressed. But our youthful naivety and excitement enabled our belief that we would somehow figure it out. Over the course of 3 years, we released 10 albums. I designed all the album art, and we screen printed all of the record jackets. I learned how to code a website so we could sell them online, and we both rushed home from our undergrad classes to pack orders before the mail went out. Tim wrote to our favorite labels to find out how to get a distributor, how to wholesale, how to network. It was a DIY operation in every sense of the word, but not that we really had much choice in that matter. There's no concrete path for doing this sort of work. You just have to follow your desire line straight into the bramble and thorns. So things were looking up by our 10th release, a quirky Canadian band called Sister Susie. Pitchfork gave it a Best New Music distinction and a positive review, and we watched that translate into sales. While we never formally considered the prospect of Common Cloud becoming a sustainable career, there was a lingering precedent set by small upstarts turned major players like Merge and Sub Pop. So could Sister Susie be our nirvana? Can we finally pay our mom back? Should I quit this last semester of school? Just to pause to say you should never quit school. We're actually contractually obligated to say that to you, students. But in too good to be true fashion, Sister Susie's lead singer Meryl Garvis quit the band just weeks after the album's initial success to perform with Yoko Ono and the Plastic Ono Band. Unfortunately, we had tied up most of our monetary resources in the promotion of Sister Susie album, and nobody wanted to buy a record of a recently deceased band. So first Yoko breaks up the Beatles, and now she tanks our label. Thanks a lot, Yoko. But in all fairness, Meryl followed her own desire lines, eventually forming Tune Yards, a band which she experienced great success and made a lot of money for someone else's record label. And retrospectively, I can see how the demise of Common Cloud would reveal new desire lines for me to follow, like a forest fire gives way to new growth. But at the time, I just felt extremely burnt and wondered what to do next.
So when Eric and I started talking about the concept of desire lines, the first thing that came to mind was my experience at Project M. For those of you who don't know what Project M is, it was started in 2003 by this guy, John Bielenberg, and the idea was to show young designers that they can make positive change through design. The concept was actually started off with this guy, Sam Mockbee, who had done the same thing with the Rural Studio, where architecture students were tasked to design and build these low-income housing. So this is actually one of the $20,000 houses that they're building all over the South now to help low-income families. So when speaking about desire lines in relationship to Project M, and especially the participants, this is Ben Berry. He was the one that started the Analog Research Laboratory at Facebook, also an M alumni. There's a really strong connective tissue that everyone seems to carry with them, and it's what I think is this idea of forced naiveness, which of course is meant in the most positive way, but when talking about design, it's something young designers have more inherently than that often gets stripped away as years go on, whether it's through jobs or bosses, but it's this idea of constantly layering on rules and these predisposed limitations. So to hold on to that, means that you're not allowing the believed rules or limitations to block your desire lines. It's almost like a forced innocence. These are the Plus Pool guys. So a great example of this is those guys that created Plus Pool, which was started by another group of Project Mers. Plus Pool really began with this simple idea that New York is this amazing place to live. You can basically do anything here except for swim in the river. So what they were doing is building a floating pool whose walls are actually filtering the water from the river. So New Yorkers could essentially swim in a clean river while the pool itself was cleaning the river water around them. And it's an incredible idea, but for ideas like this to truly flourish, it takes a certain amount of willpower not to let those perceived limitations stop you. And this is really what Project M pushes, to think wrong, meaning to break these cycles of pattern thinking. So again, to push this notion of freer thinking, Project M happens in places that are way outside of your comfort zone. Places like Greensboro, Alabama, one of the poorest, most rural counties in the United States, and this is where my own Project M experience took place. So combine that most, very rural place. It's also extremely segregated in the South. A half-built house where 8 strangers moved in and shared one bedroom in the middle of summer with one fan and no air conditioner. You can start to understand these complexities that you're kind of thrown into, and you have no idea what's going on.
It's like the real world graphic design.
It is. It totally is. Yeah, and so really, once you get into it, you realize that nobody actually knows what the fuck they're doing. I mean, the guy who started it doesn't really know, the advisors don't know, and that's actually sort of the point, really to start you thinking in these different ways than you're used to. So what we ended up doing for the project was, and it took us about 3 of the 4 weeks to actually figure this out. And up until then, we kind of ran around totally lost and clueless, coming up with all kinds of horrible ideas before cycling back to something that was actually mentioned, I think, in the first day of the project. And that idea was this water meter, and it's this object that normally every house has, but these people that were, of lower income couldn't afford this water meter to actually get clean water. So we created this simple newspaper project that was around the idea of, that everybody has this thing, except for these people who can't afford it. We designed these really crappy T-shirts and sold them for $425. They were like literally Hanes T-shirts with silk screen, $425 on them. They were horrible, and sold them and sold enough so that we hooked everybody up to clean water who hadn't previously had it. So really, Project M became one of these really pivotal experiences in my career, and choosing paths that resonate with you to your core inevitably opens up these doors and introduces you to people that are walking through life to the beat of a similar drum, which definitely was the case for me, resulting in connections over really like the next 10 years that almost always in some way came back to this first desire path.
So for the next few years of my life, I bounced around what I call the unholy trinity of designers' typical career. Small studio to large agency to in-house, rinse and repeat. I no doubt learned so much during this period of my life, and I definitely couldn't have the life I have now without this experience. But after several years on the sidewalk, I was itching to pursue something that felt more authentic to me, even if it didn't make great career sense. So I did what most people do during their quarter-life crisis, and I went to grad school. It was at MICA in Baltimore that I began to circle back to my original passion, space. And I explored this abandoned personal narrative of my life through performance pieces, much to the confusion of my graphic design MFA classmates and somewhat to myself. I saw grad school as an opportunity to develop my own voice as an artist and to further explore the desire lines of knowing myself now through this medium of design. I believe that the role of a contemporary designer is much like that of an editor. Designers can use the tools and methodologies of their profession to actively generate content. So for this performance, I played the role of an anchornaut, an explorer not of outer space, but of inner space. And I was inspired by the writings of Julian of Norwich, and she was an anchoress, like an early mystic of the church from the late 1300s. And she walled herself away in a small room of a church and experienced communication with the divine through lifelong isolation. Obviously, there's a whole lot to go into there. But for the sake of moving forward, I started to think about it as, what if there was a similar journey of self-discovery that I could take, but it was sort of told through the lens of a NASA mission. So I built a self-sustaining capsule in the school's art gallery, and I lived in it entirely isolated for 7 days. I emulated that kind of NASA aesthetic that I had devoured in books as a kid, and I ended up making my own cracked out version of the space camp and experienced a new side of myself while cut off from the world, and also creating new content to then share with the world from a unique editorial perspective. And this performance became the basis for my thesis and a book that I wrote about the project. And because I know all of you are wondering, I had a chemically remediated toilet in there, and there's a reason why how do you go to the bathroom in space is the #1 question asked to astronauts by both adults and children, and it's because you are all a bunch of weirdo freaks. So part of my graduate school education also provided me with the opportunity to take classes at Johns Hopkins. So I enrolled in an astronomy class taught by a NASA scientist, sort of against the advisement of some of my faculty who didn't really feel like how this fit into a career in graphic design. But again, as with my performances, I saw this as another opportunity to further generate editorial content that I was interested in. So Dr. Hall's class was tough, as indicated by this email, which I like reading it. I struggled to succeed in this environment that was so far outside of my skill set. My science acumen had really fallen off since my gold medal days at the academic Olympics. But I did thrive in the presentation component of the class, and I offset my poor comprehension of the universe with the razzle-dazzle of design. I was also the only student who hung around after class to talk with Dr. Hall. So he was involved in the moon landing project of the 60s, it's crazy. And he designed testing models for the lunar module, which I found endlessly fascinating. And I really believe that this enthusiasm led to Dr. Hall's eventual agreeing to let me become his intern. Though it was continually stressed to me that it was highly irregular for someone with a non-science background to become one. So Dr. Hall informed me that there was a NASA mandated requirement if I were to come in as a communications intern that I know how to create digital animated content, of which I had no experience at all. So I lied, and I said I did. And then I proceeded to take every After Effects and Final Cut Pro class I could find on lynda.com. And I strongly advise lying if someone ever asks you if you're capable of something. As a designer, you're already equipped with the necessary faculties to, synthesize content and tell an effective story. How that's executed is really just a matter of details. And I believe in the adage, fake it until you make it. But I do feel like I need to advise you that you maybe shouldn't lie in every situation. Like if someone asks if you know how to use large industrial equipment, or maybe don't lie about knowing how to do anything with lasers ever. Everything else you can figure out on the fly. And I really think that the pressure of being caught in your lie will ensure you learn faster. So I spent the summer making this. This is what I produced as an intern. I'll just show you a little bit of it.
The carbon crisis in 90 seconds. This is a banana. This is a chunk of coal. Banana is sweet and delicious, fun to eat. The coal is none of those things, but they are much more alike than they seem. Both were made by plants and store energy from the sun and carbon gas from the air around us. When you eat the banana, you use the energy stored in the banana to run and jump, and you release carbon gas back into the air around you. Now, carbon in the banana is young, fast carbon. Just weeks ago, the banana was carbon gas in the air, and hours after you eat it, you breathe out the same carbon back into the air. When we burn coal in power plants, we use the energy stored in the coal to generate electricity that powers our homes and factories, and we release carbon gas back into the air around us. However, the carbon in the coal is old, slow carbon. Plants took the coal carbon out of the air hundreds of millions of years ago. That carbon has been locked up ever since, and would stay locked up. People haven't dug up the coal and burned it. So now, by burning coal and oil, people are adding lots and lots of old carbon to the atmosphere, faster than plants in the oceans can take it out. Why do I care? Because carbon gas in the atmosphere acts like a blanket. trapping heat, and making the whole planet warmer. Hi, my name is Peter.
I'll spare you the boring NASA scientist. So I learned a lot during my time at NASA as an intern. And I spent the remainder of my time there pretty much abusing the privileges my ID card granted me. I wandered around campus and ended up in places I really had no business being. I watched as scientists in the upper left corner build the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope, which is called the James Webb. And it's pretty amazing. They think that this telescope is powerful enough to see pretty much to the edge of the known universe, past the farthest reaches of the original light from the Big Bang. So pretty much being able to see the universe before the universe had any form. I still don't know what that is going to do to somebody's brain when they figure that out. But, I also watched from the tarmac as the last space shuttle landed, forever retiring the fleet, which was a benchmark of spaceflight history that I witnessed firsthand from a vantage point of very few. I also shook the hand of my favorite astronaut, John Glenn, who was the first American to orbit the Earth. So essentially, I ended up living out this failed, abandoned childhood dream in a way that I never really could have conceived as possible. So reluctantly, though, it was time for me to move on from my internship, and a friend had passed along a job posting for a small studio in New York called Cuban Council, but I was most interested in the fact that NASA was one of their clients. So I accepted a job offer, and little did I know I was about to meet my future business partner.
So fast forward from Project M, I had a bunch of internships, graduated college, and ended up getting a job at Cuban Council, where I spent the next 4 years. Cuban Council was started in the early 2000s by 2 Danish guys and an American who had actually built one of the very first internet-based design portals called K10K. It's a long time ago.
That was actually one of the first websites that I had seen that I was just so blown away at what kind of design was happening out there. Yeah, I was beaming.
Yeah. So Cuban Council's clients there was a whole range of people, but Francis Ford Coppola, Tom Waits, companies. I think this is a good time to mention that not all desire lines are like these super unique, hard, unexpected paths. Sometimes they're experiences that are just seem kind of normal and they're great. They just have their own sort of beauty, and this is different for everybody. So yeah, and that's what Cuban Council was for me. It was this really foundational experience and a foundational desire line in my career path. And honestly, I had a really hard time even talking or figuring out how to talk about Cuban Council to you guys today. But I think what it really came down to was that this was the first time I was surrounded by this really high standard of excellence, and not just in design, that's sort of a given at this point, but really in how you deal with clients, how you work with your team, how you deliver projects. And it was one of those situations that you either had to step up or you had to leave. And so as a young designer just out of school, this was terrifying. And it was incredible, and I think really rare, and perhaps had a lot to do with why Eric and I eventually came back together to build a studio. That we had seen what was possible when you combine that standard of excellence while also building something that's very passion and interest based. So eventually I left Cuban Council when I got offered a job, what I thought was a dream job, to be the art director at what was then just forming as a company called Shinola in Dallas, Texas. And I think it's important to recognize again that sometimes desire lines are super hard to identify. And more often than not, you have to actually travel down them to really understand them. I was incredibly charmed by Shinola. They had just started building out their watch factory in Detroit. They had their eyes set on basically bringing manufacturing back to the United States. It was super exciting. But I think what really pushed me over the edge to accepting a job in Dallas and leaving New York was this weird lure of grandeur that I had never experienced before. I was offered the highest salary of my life still, my dream car, literally, the founder of this company, had this dream car and like pulled it up and was like, if you move to Dallas, I'll give you this car. And I was like, are you serious? And then the chance to rub elbows with people like the Olsen twins and Owen Wilson, which was just like a really, really bizarre experience. So it ended up being a lot of smoke and mirrors, and it forced me to step back and really think about what I wanted, which failed desire lines tend to do. But I think these experiences of failure are pivotal in finding what the right path is that you actually want to travel down. And in this case, it pushed me back to New York and into a project that I've been working on the side for the last couple of years called Carta.
So while Dana was in Dallas dealing with the rug being pulled out from under her, I was back in New York dealing with the same. One morning at Cuban Council, I got an email from my brother with a link to this article titled, "Google quietly acquihires part of design firm Cuban Council." And I really thought it was a joke. Like I thought he like made it on, in Photoshop or something. And it had happened so quietly that I hadn't even heard anything about it. And Cuban Council wound down operations in New York. And over the next month, the San Francisco team transitioned to Google. And I was pretty much left holding the broom. Dana had just returned to New York in time, and she ended up coming on to help wrap up the remaining client work. And the two of us turned out the lights on Cuban Council together. It was a really strange experience, but we totally swiped our desk chairs on the way out. So shortly after Cuban Council's demise, my brother teased the idea of getting the gang back together and taking a stab at doing a version of the record label that we had run. And of course, I had nothing better going on. So he had conceived of building a digital music distribution platform with this new selling pitch. What if we offered 10 digital albums bundled in one download for the price of one album a consumer was already paying on iTunes? So we partnered with record labels and friends bands and anyone we could sweet talk into the idea of selling their stuff at ridiculously low prices on the gamble that if we sold enough bundles in bulk, there would be a big payout for everyone. And this payment model guaranteed a bigger chunk of the sale went directly to the artist, which made it an appealing artist-friendly alternative to platforms like Spotify and Rdio, rest in peace. So we built this prototype and called it Sound Supply, and at midnight we launched it, and we shared a toast over the new venture on a video chat call, and we went to bed. We woke up the next day to this flurry of press. It was boing boinged, and it was tech crunched, and it was even Pepsi got in on the fun. You know that you're onto something when a soft drink giant starts promoting you on their blog, and like, who even follows the Pepsi blog? Like, anybody in here? No? I won't make fun of you if you do. So the concept seemed to strike a chord, and the kind of traffic we experienced in 10 days was sort of unfathomable to us. At the end of the first bundle sale, we had made more money than the entire 3 years of running Common Cloud. That was just in 10 days. And bands were writing to us saying that after the 10-day sale ran, that the payouts we were sending them were more than a normal year's worth of revenues from selling on iTunes. So, and our cut of those deals meant that Sound Supply could be sustainable. It wasn't until this Fast Company article, sensationally titled "Goodbye Spotify, Is This the Secret to Artist-Friendly Music Distribution?" several weeks later that we start to experience another side of this madness, speculation. In the fast-paced world of Silicon Valley, venture capitalists chase the speculation ambulance like a seedy lawyer. Before we knew it, we had an investment offer and we accepted it in exchange for an equity share in our company. And Tim and I opened a Sound Supply office in Chicago. Our funding allowed us to work on Sound Supply full-time and hopefully build it into something greater. We hired a part-time developer. We took business trips to South by Southwest. We kind of embraced this new lifestyle as startup co-founders. You know, we started riding scooters, Razor scooters around the office and playing ping pong all day. I mean, we didn't actually do that, but that's like, you know, what people think of in a startup situation. So we launched our new product and enjoyed some banner growth, really consistent growth for 6 months. But after that, there was a weird turn and our numbers just started to slip. And we tried to do things to diversify our revenue stream. You know, we tried bundling podcasts. we tried curating bundles for brands that just didn't make sense. Like, I don't know who wants to listen to like Doritos Summer Mix, but so anyway, and then copycat products started to flood the marketplace, and we really didn't have a legal recourse to pursue any of them. It's a pretty standard idea, and we just really didn't have the interest. So sound supply somewhat died a slow and demoralizing death after kind of this meteoric rise. And eventually my brother went on and joined a world touring band, and I was sort of left figuring out what to do. I was at another career crossroad.
So on the other side of that, you know, I had just gotten back to New York, and I think the last 7 or 8 years have really culminated in this really strong desire to build something of my own. The experience at Shinola had fueled this realistic understanding of myself that working on something fulfilling was a lot more important than working on anything else. So I quit my job and moved back to New York to work solely on this idea around social mapping. Carter really began out of this need. At the time, my co-founder and I were both traveling a lot. I had been in and out of New York. Our friends were constantly sharing things that they wanted to do, not only you know, when they were traveling, but in their given cities. So we launched in the summer of 2013 with 300 users who were allowed to invite 5 friends. It was mostly designers, bloggers, travelers. We were going after people who already had a natural tendency to organize and collect and share these places. It was super fascinating to watch how it grew. More so than really sharing restaurants, we saw Carta as a platform to start sharing interest-based collections. So people really surprised us. We're making maps like this one of a collection of old dirty bastard murals to ambient soundscapes, to street art in Bombay, and they were making maps all over the world, from like Kabul to Africa to Argentina to Kansas. It was incredible. But after a couple of years of working on this and self-funding the entire project while while living in New York with no job was seriously draining. Like, having no money in New York is hard, and it became too much. So we kept hitting wall after wall. You know, not having full-time jobs to really support what we were doing because we were so focused on this, we decided to shut it down in 2014. And it was actually like a really insane experience to essentially like kill something that you love so dearly, but you just can't keep it going. It was devastating.
So we're gonna pick up the pace here so we can leave time for questions. So this kind of leads us to what we did next. So as our individual companies were coming to a close, Dana and I bonded over our mutual disappointment by drinking and dressing up like Wayne's World characters. This wasn't even Halloween. Actually, isn't it cool? There's like guy Garth and girl Garth, and they wanted us to kiss. It was weird. So anyway, burned out on New York, we started looking for a new inspiration, and we took this long trip to Vietnam and rode motorcycles and ate amazing food. And we sort of strategized what our next moves were going to be. And the more and more we talked about it, we realized that our future desires were more aligned than we had realized. And we started to visualize a studio that was based around the idea of being able to work with people who are really trying to make a future impact. But a major hindrance of this goal was living in New York. So we decided to change scenery. It's just, you know, was cost prohibitive, and we also felt like we really just did actually need a change of scenery in order to like break pattern thinking and some of the things that Dina picked up in Project M. So that pretty much leads us to today. This is the first day we moved into our new office. And I'm doing a ritualistic ceremony surrounding building IKEA furniture for good prosperity. So really, we're caught up to where we are now, and you know, we're really excited about year 2 as this experiment really takes form, and we're ready to follow more desire lines that manifest. So, if you guys have any questions?
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? In the back.
Sure. What made you choose Portland?
That's a good question. Well, we probably the biggest reason would be that we have a majority of our clients in San Francisco. And who wants to live in San Francisco when you can live up here and actually enjoy your life? But what was great is that Portland actually is kind of an amazing alternative to New York, and the accessibility we have to nature, you know, smaller communities. So those were just a few of the reasons. Dana liked the boy, but whatever. That was one of the reasons too.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Have you found clients here in Portland since establishing yourself?
No.
No. You know, and there's amazing studios here that service Portland-based clients. We're not against the idea, obviously. But part of the thing we actually really do love about the studio is that it provides us an opportunity to travel, which is something that Dana and I are both really enthusiastic about. So we don't mind having clients like in LA, especially when it's raining here all the time. It kind of gives us an excuse to get out and enjoy some sun. You, sir.
Space.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Have you been?
So, it's good to see you back here on the planet.
Yeah, right?
But I really like the way that you started out with the space thing, and then your design lines took you all over the place, and actually some of them you ended up with your space thing. And so, are you still in space?
Right. I mean, I think that, sorry, that's kind of directed now. No, I think definitely having NASA as a client now that we can continue to work with, it still continues to appease that 10-year-old Eric who, you know, came home from space camp so excited to be involved in that, and really finding a roundabout way to still be involved in that, even though it didn't work out maybe as I had originally planned. But I think that the message maybe here is that there's probably lots of things in all of your lives, especially that you know, form you know, when you're young, in those formative years and stuff that are hard to let go, and maybe they're worth paying attention to. That kind of like passion gets kind of cauterized at that age, and it's been kind of a wealth of inspiration for me to constantly tap into in my career. So maybe there's some of that in your own lives that are worth exploring. Dinosaurs, and what I was into those kind of. Maybe you guys were.
Well, thank you both very much.
Thank you for having us.